have a great discussion about businesses, farming businesses. Just to tell you a little brief introduction about myself, my name is, again, Greg Burrell. I'm a Chapter 13 trustee. I'll get into what that means in a moment. Married to my wife, Latoya. She's an attorney. I'm an attorney by trade as well. I have two beautiful kids, Grayson and Garrison. And just to kind of give you guys an idea of what it is that I do as Chapter 13 trustee. This is an appointment from the Department of Justice to administer Chapter 13 bankruptcy cases. And what a Chapter 13 bankruptcy case is, it's a case that's filed in the federal court, and where an individual is trying to either save a house, a car, because they've gotten behind on payments. What they do is they go in and they set up a plan with the court and their attorney to pay back some of the back fees and catch up and keep their home, stop the foreclosure. And this plan is set up, and my office, myself, is tasked with administering this plan. What does that mean in terms of administering the plan? I make payments to creditors. I'm like a clearinghouse. This was a position that was just kind of unheard of to me. I never knew about it until I really got into just a little background on myself. I said I'm an attorney by trade. I was a bankruptcy attorney, so I was on the other side of the fence filing cases on behalf of clients, Chapter 13 and Chapter 7 cases. Well, I learned, later, I learned that, okay, there's a trustee, a Chapter 13 trustee, and this is what they do. This sounds like a nice gig, right? So that grew my aspirations to want to become a Chapter 13 trustee, which the Chapter 13 trustee is basically given a business, it's called like a government contract that's established through the Department of Justice to administer these cases. Now, how I make money, just kind of give you an idea of how that works. My office is tasked with dispersing funds to creditors from the plan that the bankruptcy attorney sets up. This plan, again, comes to my office. I send the payments out. But how I make my money to cover my office and cover my salary and all my employees is I'm allowed to take up to a 10% commission on the payments that I disperse. What does that mean? My office disperses on average about $30 million a year. Of that $30 million, I'm able to take up to a 10% percentage fee to cover all the expenses of the office and all the salaries of the office as well as myself. So this is a pretty good gig that the government is going to provide you clients and for your business, because it's sort of like a contractual agreement with the Department of Justice, which I had no idea about. I had no idea about how to get here, or just was kind of by chance. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, where I practiced law. Opportunity came up here in Minnesota, so that's how I ended up here. Once in a lifetime opportunity. I told my wife, I said, hey, we're going. So that's how the opportunity came about and how I got here. Early on, I was a a criminal law practitioner, which was kind of like my own business. So I came out of law school, didn't have a big job waiting for me like most of the law school graduates. So I had to kind of figure things out for myself. Like most of my attorney colleagues, when we graduate, we go into practice for ourselves. So in figuring things out, my start, I don't want to just tell you about the finish and how good it was and how I am where I am today. But my start was pretty rocky because I didn't have the resources, or I didn't know enough about the resources that I needed in order to start my own business, which was the law firm. So Black Lion Foundation is a great organization to utilize to at least get you to those resources and work with you. I didn't have that coming up. So, I had a rocky start. It was really rough, tough time coming up. I didn't know, hey, did I want to be this type of business? Did I need to get tax IDs? None of that stuff. So I kind of had to learn it all on my own. Eventually I got through it, but again, I cannot stress enough having the resources and tools like Black Lions trying to provide to individuals to get there. It's very important. Right now, I run my own business. I had to learn a lot of things about, it was a business that was kind of handed to me, but I still had to learn a lot as far as compliance things. Some of the things I'm going to discuss with you, I just have to give this disclosure. It is not intended to create an attorney-client relationship with anybody out there as a viewer, nor is it intended to be taken as legal advice. Just have to give that disclaimer as an attorney. But some of the things that are very important when forming a business that looking at it from a legal perspective is, first off, what type of business do I want to be? What type of business suits the needs of my company. And I'm going to talk about that from a perspective of there's a limited liability corporation, there's a partnership if you're going in business with somebody else. And all the type of business you choose has tax consequences, legal consequences, liability, all those things, which are all very important. For example, if a limited liability corporation is basically by creating an LLC, you're saying that, hey, this entity is separate from me. I'm an individual, whereby this business is a corporation. So we're not one and the same. So that's very important. But for one who's setting up a business, like going back to the days when I first started off in a law firm, I didn't understand what keeping things separate meant so much. So there's a concept called piercing the corporate veil. So if, for example, you set up your business, it's an LLC, and you don't set up a business account specifically for that LLC, and you're putting personal money into the business account, and you're taking personal money off the business account for your personal use, then you run into problems and issues from a limited liability company's perspective. So, if it came down to the reason why most people file the paperwork as an LLC, so they can avoid being, say for instance, that I have a product that I put out there and the product is defective and somebody gets hurt. Well, limited liability corporation says that you can only sue this corporation, you cannot sue me personally, right? So with that being said, if I don't set up my corporation right and I'm dipping into the bank accounts of the LLC is kind of being used as a personal account, the concept of piercing the corporate veil becomes important, because whereby you said we were separate, you were treating it as one and the same. So if somebody suing you may come in and say, you know what? Hey, you guys were operating as one and the same, so y'all should be treated as one and the same. So when if I'm suing James Homes LLC, no, I'm actually suing James personally, because they are one and the same. So that it's very important that you understand some of these concepts and ideas when creating a business, and the business accounts, the business tax IDs, and the likes of all these things that goes along with the business, and keeping those things separate from your personal assets, personal liabilities, etc. Let's see here. Filing tax returns. These are all very important things. Filing your tax returns on time. Like I mentioned, there's different types of businesses that you can form, but there's also different monies that are out there that you can get for your business, depending on what type of business you're into, as far as government contracts, which is kind of the classification of my business. But if you want to get government contracts, you have to look at it from a perspective of having all of your ducks in a row. And by saying having all of your ducks in a row, I mean I have a tax ID number, I file tax returns, I have a business bank account, and just mention a few things, some of the things that Black Lion tries to do and incorporate into helping individuals getting these things right from the start so that you can qualify. One of the biggest things and biggest issues for a lot of minority-owned businesses, I heard in an article I read, was that when it came down to getting the PPP money, they didn't qualify. Why they didn't qualify? Because they didn't have their ducks in a row. They didn't have things set up properly to get this funding. And it's lots of funding out there. These days we have so many tools available to us to do the research to find. You can go to Google and find out all the resources that are available to us. It's a lot, but we have to have our ducks in a row in order to take advantage of these resources. So that's what I'm kind of getting at, talking about taxes, paying your taxes, having your tax returns filed on time, paying quarterly taxes for your business, estimates, from where you were, what you think is owed. It's all important so you don't fall behind on taxes. Let's see here. It's also important to know, when you form your business, how you want your business to operate. I say your business, your playbook, right? If you have employees, you need to have what you call an employee handbook, a manual or something that lays out, this is the governing body of this organization, of this corporation, so that it's understood that this is how we do things. And it's good to have a lawyer. Get a lawyer. Get somebody to look at your handbook. Make sure it's compliant with the laws of that state or that city or wherever you are, because that's again very important, having that compliance component. Things like, okay, if you work over a certain amount of hours, you have to pay overtime. You can't what is the relationship of my employees? Are they contract employees? All those things, all those classifications need to be laid out, because it's laws that affect or govern how things are supposed to be done according to the classification of your employees. Withholding taxes, that's another important aspect. If you don't withhold taxes from an employee, if you don't have a contract relationship and you're supposed to be withholding taxes and you don't send those taxes, then you're liable. So, again, it's important to understand your business and understand how it's modeled, how it's shaped, the relationship of employees, whether they're contract employees or whether they're salaried employees, because all these things make a difference. Let's see, one of the big things with a business is marketing. From the marketing perspective, when you come up with a business idea, how do I want to market it? How do I want to get it into the stream of commerce? This is important because if you don't have a plan of how you're going to get that business out there, then you won't get people to consumers, people to purchase the product. So having that plan, advertising, I'll go back to my younger years when I talk about starting out a law firm. Well, I knew I could do the work, but everybody else didn't know I can do the work. So why is it important that you get it out there? And I know starting off a business, you have very limited resources. I couldn't compete with the big guys who had big billboards and the likes of those things. So I had to come up with a marketing plan. I needed clients to know that I was able to provide a service to them, right? And what that looked like is that sometimes looked like me, Stan, I use the concept of hustling. That looked like me hustling, going out there, passing out cards, meeting people, letting people know, hey, this is what I do. And eventually, somebody will bite and they'll give you the opportunity. And once you get that opportunity, you blow that door open because they'll recommend you to somebody else. Most businesses succeed by word of mouth. That's the best type of advertisement that you can have, because the service that you provide is so excellent that people want to talk about it to somebody else. So, in your business marketing plan, looking at it from that perspective, you need to make sure that you're marketing yourself in a way that people say, hey, I want to support them. I want to buy that product. I believe in that. I believe in that product. Those are all important factors, that lead to the success of the business. How hungry are you for promoting or pushing that product? Are you, losing sleep over getting it out there? Do you want this product to be successful? Because you are the main marketer of your product. And, people have to understand that in a business, it's tough. Most businesses don't make it out of, first 3 years of being in business. So you have to be hungry for your business success, and then being hungry, knowing that you want to produce certain results and how far are you willing to go to get to those results. There are many resources out there to help you, organizations like Black Lion Foundation out there to help you, but how hungry are you? Are you going to help yourself? Those are very important things. Are you going to learn the things that they're telling you to get to make your business ultimately become a success? Let's see here. I talked about the employee handbook, and again, why that's so important, because that's your governing body, or your set of rules of how you're going to conduct your business. And also knowing when you create a business, there's also certain things that you could and cannot ask when you're interviewing employees. So you get to the point where your business is blowing up, right? You need people to work for you because you can't do it all yourself, right? So we talked about in the forming a business, having first it was you working, now you got to a point where you need employees, how you're going to structure that, what that's going to look like. And when you have to hire employees, it's important to know, well, what kind of questions am I going to ask that employee? Because you subject yourself to liability if you go and you talk about criminal activity. Have you ever been convicted of a felony, or the likes of those type of things? Being a new business, many people don't know these things. They don't know you can't ask these questions. They don't know you can't ask questions that hinge on discrimination for race, sex, or any of those factors. So it's important to protect your company from all this liability that's standing out there. Educate yourself on the things that you can do. Look at, definitely talk to attorney, consult an attorney about, these things in terms of when you're creating your employee handbook, liability issues that may lurk out there, and just do an overall review of your business. It's very important that you do that. Let's see here. I talked about not mixing business and your personal affairs, which I find is very important. It's so tempting to, when you're starting a business, most businesses don't have a lot of liquidation and a lot of capital when they're starting off. So, personal finances may be short this month. So you go dip into the business account for personal things. You say, I'm going to put it back. That's a no-no. You never want to do that. That creates problems for the future. That creates liability issues. So, you want to be cognizant of that fact. Another huge thing is, I have a question here, things I would think about for my younger self in terms of questions I would ask, things I think were important from when I started. I said, what are some lessons I learned early on about running a business? The biggest thing, the single most important thing I think I learned, and this goes far, I know it's going to sound simple, but it's very important, is that relationships are very important. Relationships are what causes people to be inclined to help you, to share your product, talk about your business. That's the best marketing that you can get. You want to keep, these days we have social media, right? You want to keep the buzz going about your product or what you're doing or your business. The more you can do that, the more people are talking, the more people are going to be inclined to say, hey, I want to give that business a shot. I heard so-and-so say that's a good thing what they do over there. I like that product. So it's important. Relationships are very important. And that works both ways. I hear a lot of time people say in the African-American community, in the likes of the African-American community, that when we talk about the service or the product that we received wasn't good or we didn't receive it, how damaging that is. And a lot of times you have a lot of startup businesses where we haven't got to that point where we can take care of all the X's and O's in terms of our business, making it, more successful like businesses that have been established for years. And the reason why I say this is the reason why I'm saying that relationships are so important, so that you don't fall into that slump of having bad reviews about the type of business that you do or what you're doing, because those things can be damning in the community, everywhere. You want to be prepared, and those relationships, building those relationships helps that. It helps keeping that buzz going about your business. Another good thing I say is always, even in my career right now, have a mentor. There's somebody who has been down the road that you've been down. There's somebody who has dealt with the problems that you've dealt with. And you're going to deal with problems. Starting a business, I say my title is not business owner. My title is problem solver. Because, in solving the problems, my position is I have to put myself in a position where I can get the people who are under me to think about ways in the future to solve these problems so they don't come back. But when you have a mentor, you have somebody you can go to, a go-to person who likely has dealt with those problems, who can tell you, this is the easy solution, this is what works for me, this is what worked for me. So a mentor in terms of business is huge. It helps a lot to have someone to mentor you. And they don't have to be on the same line of business of what you're doing. It's just somebody who understands, because the business concept kind of repeats itself in terms of the same things, same issues coming up. But again, it's important to have that mentor. Let's see, business insurance. I want to talk about from the compliance perspective. Having business insurance. Business insurance is very important, especially in these times. A lot of small businesses starting out, it was tough. It's tough with being able to purchase business insurance and these types of things. But it's important. Right now, you have a lot of businesses who went belly up. Even established businesses because they didn't have business interruption insurance. In light of the things that happened with the George Floyd situation, a lot of businesses, things happened, businesses were down, and they didn't have that insurance to help them out to get through a rough patch or a rough time. So business insurance is very important to keeping your business going. I've always said as a model, and this is what I do in kind of running my business, is you always hear that you should have, for your life personally, you should have 3 months, or at least 6 months of expenses bankrolled, so that if anything happened, you'll be able to pay your expenses and stay afloat for 6 months. Well, I think that concept applies to business, and it should apply in a way that you should be putting monies aside for a rainy day. You should always be putting money aside for a rainy day, because Yeah, things may be good right now in the business, or even when you haven't really reached that point where you're well established, you should always have a fund set aside for rough days and tough times. Anybody in business will tell you that there's always tough times. There's always situations where the business isn't going to be flourishing like it was before, whether it be a seasonal thing or what have you. But always put those monies aside for rainy days, because they're coming, and that's a tough lesson in business that many people have to learn. But it's a reality. Keep those funds on the side. It's very important. Let's see. I think I've hit on most of the points I wanted to hit on here. Let's see, where am I on time? 45 minutes. Okay.
Well, that's what is taken up.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's see. Again, I'll conclude there. Again, I appreciate your time. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you. That was 45.